Caught my brother, 8M, playing with his butt and feces. Since about 6 months ago, he has been having accidents in his pants. 2 weeks ago he pooped his pants and had it smeared all over his chest, which everyone in the family was very confused about. This evening I, 18F, came into the living room to see him watching gaming videos with his pants pulled down and his hands in his butt. The room smelled horribly like feces. I asked him what he was doing and he got very defensive and said he was just trying to have fun. I don't want to give him any type of shame as a child, so I immediately turned on my nice voice and encouraged him to wash his hands and his remote and reminded him to never put his hands in his mouth after doing that. I think maybe this is why he has his accidents and that it's been happening for a while. I'm afraid to tell my parents because he already responded to me very ashamed and avoidant, and my parents are not the type to be sensitive about anything that is foreign, uncomfortable to them. I'm not sure if this is merely a pleasure thing or if something else medical is going on. How do I approach this without leaving any emotional scarring? He has no mental disabilities or anything. Edit. Told my mom, she's adamant that he's only scratching his butt because he doesn't wipe properly. Not sure what more I can do if she won't listen to my concerns. No, it's not because he doesn't wipe properly. This started in the last 6 months, there has to be a reason for it. I don't know what that reason is, but he can't have been wiping properly for the past 4 years and then suddenly be doing it wrong. Your brother needs medical and psychological help. Emphasize to your parents that he's putting your household at risk because he's likely getting fecal matter everywhere in the house. Children very rarely start these kinds of regressive behaviors for no reason. Whether it's abuse of some kind, or bullying, or anxiety, or a medical issue he can't articulate, or God knows what else, there's a reason behind it and it needs to be addressed by professionals. This requires clinical intervention. Have your parents tell the pediatrician and he will likely be seen for a physical exam and then referred to a child psychologist. This is not a minor issue you can handle at home, and you want it handled professionally before he starts doing this at school or it becomes an even bigger issue at home. This will not stop on its own. Get him help. This is way above Reddit's pay grade, but it is a common thing child psychologists, social workers deal with. Definitely tell your parents about this. He should see a doctor or a counselor. This could be an indication of some sort of abuse happening to him. Usually children playing with their feces is a very telling sign of psychological distress. There's a high likelihood that he is facing or has faced some sort of traumatic situation here. It more so concerns me that he said that he, just trying to have fun. Why does he think it's fun? This is a huge red flag. Since you've told your parents and they are ignoring it, time to go higher. School counselor, teacher, or even CPS. This is a pretty big red flag indicating possible sexual abuse in a kid that age. I would tell your parents and have them bring him to a counselor or doctor. Smearing poop. I would mention it to your parents and have them take him to a doctor. He's a little old to simply be curious about that sort of thing. ETA. Just saw your edit. If your mom thinks it's because he isn't wiping properly, then he needs to be taught how to wipe properly. I don't understand why your mill is being so passive about this. Agree with the others. I'm an elementary teacher and that would be a big red flag if that was a new thing that started happening in the last 6 months at age 8. I would suggest discussing this with your parents, and then if they dismiss it, either the school, a counselor or pediatrician. Some of this is red flags of sexual abuse. Create a mental inventory. Who is he alone with? How does he act around them all? Or has someone new been coming around that makes him uncomfortable? You cannot let this go. Please be his voice. I understand this may not be the case. But you owe it to him to at least look into it enough to rule it out. If he tells you what's been happening, please make sure you pursue charges. Since you already went to your mom and she dismissed it, please do as other commenters said. Document, document, document. What he said, did what you said, what your mom said. Then you can follow up. If your parents don't, reach out to community sources. Doctors, therapists, social workers, some children development centers may have contacts. Get a diary. Write down only the facts of what you have seen, dates, time, exactly what was said and what you saw. If you end up talking to a doctor, show him/her the diary so that they can understand how often this occurs and if there are any triggers. It sounds like he is either sexually experimenting, going through something mentally, or is just not understanding that this isn't an age-acceptable behavior. Usually children playing with their feces is a very telling sign of psychological distress. There's a high likelihood that he is facing or has faced some sort of traumatic situation here. Please call CPS. You'll need to tell your parents, document when this has happened and the facts surrounding the occurrences, locations, times of day. Your parents need to take him to a doctor and a therapist. Don't question him about this yourself. You could inadvertently change the way he answers questions when someone else questions him later. If there's a local children's hospital, you could call and ask them for resources. Tell them he's recently started a concerning behavior and you want to make sure he hasn't been abused. They should be able to help you contact someone who knows how to ask him the right questions. This is not anywhere close to developmentally normal. Talk to your parents ASAP about what you saw. If it is a suspected wiping problem, get him some wet wipes. Say that you noticed the problem from seeing the laundry or make up some excuse. There's a funny video using balloons to teach kids how to wipe their behinds. And yes, this is a serious red flag of sexual abuse. Document, look around for some resources, or even consider putting an anonymous call to child services. Try to see if what has changed in the past 6 months. This is serious, please contact a doctor and a child therapist. You should get your brother checked for parasites such as ringworms. Kids in primary schools pick them up easily. They can cause itching around the anus which leads to scratching. The GP can also get him referral for other counseling and psychological resources. Usually children playing with their feces is a very telling sign of psychological distress. There's a high likelihood that he is facing or has faced some sort of traumatic situation here. Smearing, playing with poop, can be a sign of autism. He is still young, but how is he with social interactions? Another sign. Could you speak to parents, school about getting his assessed and therefore, support he needs? I am also going to emphasize that this is a very possible sign of some sort of abuse. If he was younger I would have said that's a pretty common thing, to suddenly be intrigued by their own body, whether it's feces or something else. However, 8 is alarmingly late for that. And most people, have very clear memories from when we were 8, and playing with feces was not a part of it and you absolutely understood that poop was nasty. Which is why this is a problem. Something is going on with him. Can you speak to his school about this? Is there a counselor of some sort? I wouldn't talk to him about why he is doing this because as others have pointed out false confessions are easy to obtain from children. But he certainly needs to talk with someone who knows what they're dealing with. This sounds like he may have been sexually abused. Try to get him to a doctor to at least get a checkup. Since your mom isn't listening to you, can you email his teacher? Don't tell the teacher what he has been doing, but say that you want to talk to his school counselor about something that has been going on with your brother that your parents haven't been taking seriously. Once you're in contact with the school counselor, hopefully they'll be able to connect him with some help or direct you to more resources. I don't mean to scare you, but he is showing signs of abuse. He really needs to doctor ASAP. I would try speaking to your parents again. He definitely needs to be evaluated by a pediatrician. I am an PNP, and I have seen this in a few children in my career. He might need to see a gastroenterologist, psychologist or both, but start with the pediatrician. Usually children playing with their feces is a very telling sign of psychological distress. There's a high likelihood that he is facing or has faced some sort of traumatic situation here. He needs to be seen by his pediatrician. Sexual abuse is possible. Other psychological issues as well. The other possibility is that he is very constipated. One of the most common reasons for poop accidents in kids is that they are constipated and hold it too long and have an accident, or softer feces leaks around the impacted feces causing an accident. He may be using his fingers to try to relieve the constipation. Using fingers to try to pull poop out is actually fairly common for children who are badly constipated. Maybe he had worms and can be checked out by a doctor. My brother had issues with smearing poop when he was little. He had a couple of things going on mentally. Yours needs professional intervention. Please consider reporting this to someone besides your parents. This is a doctor thing. This is not a Reddit thing. Your parents need to get him help, and if they won't tell them you will, and it could get them into a lot of trouble. Talk to a doctor yourself. If you can't take him, they legally have to report abuse, sexual, psychological, or medical, and if they consider this a major sign they'll do it and get your brother help. You should either tell your parents that he needs help like now, or call any child protective service at your location. This needs to be addressed like yesterday. Maybe contact a school guidance counselor and ask for help. It sounds like your parents will need coaching on how to deal with it. Also, this would be good if either of them caused the issue. Go to doctor, check for worms maybe. If not, psychological distress from a trigger. Could be an anal fixation. But I almost wonder if there's some abuse going on. Depends on the reason he thinks it's fun. Probably grabbing at straws. But no, this is something that needs to be addressed and stopped. One of the number one signs of being molested is suddenly having bathroom issues, wetting the bed long after being potty trained and playing with poop. It's a defense mechanism, and makes kids feel like they have control. And #X200B. Whoever has entered your brother's life in the last 6 months likely deserves a bullet to the head. Hopefully being 18 you can convince your parents of this, but I know I couldn't convince mine. Do what you can to keep him safe, and try to ask him plainly if someone has been touching him, and assure him he won't get in trouble. When I worked summer camp, I worked with a kid around that age who had similar problems. We would find him in the bathroom stall with poop smeared all over the walls. Turns out he had a medical condition, not sure which one, that caused problems with him bowels. I'm not saying that's what's happening here, but it could be a possible explanation. I would highly suggest filing a report for CPS. To me these look like red flags for child sexual abuse. If this behavior has developed very suddenly when he had no issue before, it could be because of some trauma. If you trust your parents fully, I would go to them first, but CPS should get involved. CPS workers are trained to interview children that may have been sexually abused without getting false confessions because of suggestion. There is either nothing here or just this link. The most common cause for this behavior in children his age is abuse. The most common candidate for that abuse is his parent. He has a parent who is denying that this behavior is even happening. Unfortunately, what you need to assume right now is that he is being abused by your mother. Honestly, if he's eaten uncooked spaghetti, it could also be worms or something of the sort. The worms could be itchy, or he could be trying to pick them out and be too ashamed, confused to ask for help. Definitely urge your mom to take him to a doctor. It is a very big sign of sexual abuse. Tell your parents and get him help. A change like this and doing this is very abnormal, and it could be sexual abuse, or sadly because he seems to not be bothered by smell and knowing it's not normal, he know it's not something his friends do. Trust me, it can be an onset of a severe mental illness. I had a friend who has dealt with this before, with one of her students. The child dug in and would wipe the feces under furniture. Apparently they stopped pooping in a toilet around age 8 or 9. Came to find out it was a mix of fear of having people know they were using a toilet, and if I remember correctly, their older sibling threatening to kill them and holding a knife to their throat. From what it sounded like, the older sibling had problems of their own. The teacher reported it to the counselor when the child became very constipated from holding it in. I think she mentioned that the parents were completely unaware. The child was put on some medication to force bowel movements and had to see a therapist. This happened over 10 years ago, but maybe it will help you op. My mill used to work with troubled children in a juvenile detention center, and there were a few of them that had similar issues of playing with their feces or spreading their feces around the bathroom when they went. And these kids were older, like 12 to 14. The director of the place finally told her that this is common behavior among children that have been sexually abused. There is a possibility that something like that happened or is happening to him. I know that is really hard to hear and is honestly heartbreaking, but your mom needs to get him to a therapist, or a mandated reporter needs to be talked to, someone at his school. I heard some kids pee their pants after abuse down there at a young age. I know he isn't peeing his pants but could be relevant. Time to see Dr. Wong.